Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you are. My name is Marco del Rio, and I'm the director of the Stripe Mexico for BFA Global. For quick reference, BFA Global is an impact innovation firm that combines research, advisory, venture building, and investment expertise to build a more inclusive, equitable, and resilient future for underserved people and the planet. I'm delighted to introduce this panel discussion, which promises to be an enlightening exploration of the resilience of micro and small enterprises in Mexico. This panel discussion stems for a survey conducted under the umbrella of the Stripe Mexico program, generously funded by the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth, which is a program that aims to enhance the resilience of 400,000 MSEs, focusing on women-owned MSEs and nano enterprises. Our dialogue will unfold in two distinct parts. In the first part, we will unveil the results from the survey conducted in Mexico around the shocks, coping mechanisms, and drivers of the resilience of MSEs. The second segment of our discussion will explore the challenges and opportunities of integrating the MSE resilience into the value proposition of both development organizations and commercial entities. We will explore how fostering resilience can become a cornerstone in their mission. And in this section, we will surface how the climate vulnerability of MSEs can be integrated into the current efforts to measure and support MSEs, and how the data can help to address it more effectively. Can you turn the next slide, please?
One sec. Okay, sorry. I went too fast.
Yeah, thank you. With me today is a group of esteemed colleagues, each bringing a wealth of experience and expertise to our discussion on MSE resilience. So let me start with Valerie de la Fuente, who serves as a Stripe Mexico implementation lead. Valerie is also managing consultant at Mastercard, where she has played a pivotal role in projects with major banks and fintech companies in Mexico and Central America, promoting financial inclusion for millions. We are honored to have Juana Barrete, President for Business and Partnerships Development at Fundación Capital. With 22 years of experience in financial inclusion, Juan has contributed significantly to Mexico's development bank sector. He has worked as an independent consultant on projects across Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Africa. And last but not least is Tatiana Petrone, the Director of Partnerships and Innovation at Micromentor. Tatiana is a dedicated entrepreneur passionate about scaling initiatives that positively impact individuals and communities around the world. She leads Micromentor's partnership portfolio, fostering collaborations that drive entrepreneurship worldwide. Welcome, panelists. So with our esteemed panelists, we look forward to this, to have an insightful and constructive discussion that can drive positive change in the country. Thank you for joining us in this endeavor. So let me start by diving into the first part of this discussion. And as I mentioned before, Stripe Mexico is a program that aims to support 400,000 micro and small enterprises in their journey to become more resilient. The program design was informed partially by the white paper Roads to Resilience, developed by BFA Global in 2022. In this research, we found a need to define what we mean by MSE resilience, its drivers, and the pathways to resilience for MSEs in the country. This research connects with the program implementation as it allows us to give evidence-based guidance to the companies we are providing acceleration services and to the broader ecosystem of support of MSEs as part of the program. We first developed a framework to understand MSE resilience better to advance this agenda. Resilience is a complex construct that defies easy categorizations. It's not just a mere outcome, but rather a capacity or an ability to actively influence those outcomes. This capacity is not easily quantifiable, as it is multidimensional and is not directly observable. This framework results from a literature review of some of the most salient research to understand the resilience of MSEs and the work done by BFA Global in other regions. We use capabilities as a combination of assets, behaviors, and strategies. Our framework measures the capability of MSEs to thrive in the digital economy, and we group these capabilities into three spheres: financial, digital, and operational, and entrepreneurial, and psychosocial capabilities. Then we develop a survey that could provide light to answer questions like, what are the predominant shocks faced by MSEs? How long does it take generally to recover from those shocks? What are the most common coping strategies employed by MSEs? How effective is savings to promote faster recovery compared to other mechanisms? What are the key differences between the resilience of men-owned MSEs and women-owned MSEs, among other questions? We conducted 400 in-person surveys in different municipalities in the state of Hidalgo, Mexico, in collaboration with Plaza Noawi. We established a sample that allows us to conduct disaggregated analysis by gender, and we surveyed 8 types of MSEs: retail, beauty salons, artisans, restaurants, food preparation, pharmacies, clothing stores, and hardware stores. These sectors were chosen because they concentrate the vast majority of MSEs in the country. In the next slide, we want to share the resilience framework components and which of them score higher using an index from 0 to 100 that we built in order to do a benchmark analysis. So as you can see, we found that survey MSEs fare better on psychosocial capabilities than on financial, digital, operational, and entrepreneurial aspects. This is no surprise, since most survey MSEs have proven resilience as they have overcome COVID. Regarding financial capabilities, more MSEs owners fare better in saving frequently compared to access to funds from financial service providers within a week in case of emergencies. We include 4 elements in the case of digital, operational, and entrepreneurial capabilities. First, we assess whether respondents follow rules that have proven successful for them, or as we may call it, business heuristics. We also wanted to understand business vulnerabilities to supply chain disruptions. So we ask how difficult it will be for them to restore the supply of materials and inventory if they lost their main suppliers. They score above 50 in both aspects. We also wanted to know how common certain business practices we believe are conducive to higher performance. So we ask MSEs if they keep track in a ledger or in a notebook of things like sales, debts, bill payments, and the amount of money they take home. Here, the results were 42. Then, as research has repeatedly found, adopting digital tools positively impacts business performance. Therefore, we explore how much digital adoption surveyed MSEs have, from marketing using social media networks to accepting digital payments and inventory management. The score they obtained was the lowest of all at 27. Finally, the framework includes psychosocial capabilities using grit, agency, and businesses' social networks. To explore the levels of grittiness, we ask MSEs what their most likely response would be if they encounter a significant obstacle while pursuing a goal. Most respondents will persist and try different approaches to overcome challenges if there is a chance that they won't work out well. We evaluate the agency through a statement that allows us to see the perception of control, the locus of control of MSEs owners in managing their businesses present and future. 2 in 3 MSE owners responded with a strong agency. The strength of social networks within a business community could be also powerful in understanding MSEs' access to knowledge sharing, collaboration, and support from peers in similar businesses. On that matter, MSEs obtained the lowest score with 52 out of 100. In the following slide, we found 4 aspects regarding shocks. First, facing shocks and emergencies is endemic to running MSEs, as all survey MSEs responded to having at least one moment of profit reduction in the last 12 months. As the pandemic ceased, the main sources of shocks came from economic and health issues. And the top 3 reasons for a reduction in profit were low demand, sicknesses, and price increases. Those shocks tend to be acute for most of the MSEs, as 60% reported a reduction of at least half of their profit on their profit. A fifth saw a reduction of 3/4 or more. Recovering from those shocks is difficult, as a third of MSEs reported not recovering yet. For another third, the shock recovery lasted 6 months, between 1 and 6. In the next slide, we found that MSEs tend to rely on multiple coping mechanisms. MSEs use 2.4 coping mechanisms to deal with shocks on average. However, this figure varies depending on the severity of the shock. Only 1 in 5 MSEs needing a week to recover use more than 2 mechanisms, in contrast with 3 in 5 needing some months to recover. The top 5 mechanisms here were using savings, reducing business expenses, reducing household expenses, working extra hours, and borrowing money. However, some mechanisms are more effective than others, and people employ them for shocks that impact differently. We found that using savings is the most common coping mechanism for shocks of different magnitudes. However, its importance is greater for those shocks with a shorter impact on profits. In other words, we can say that savings come first in the line of defense. In contrast, borrowing money or reducing household expenses are more common for larger shocks. We could see MSEs using these more costly strategies only for the most acute shocks. We also found that households and MSE coping mechanisms are intertwined, as almost 4 in 10 business owners reduce household expenses. Finally, in this slide, the harness of a shock is negatively associated with the time needed to recover from it, as we might expect. Most MSEs that saw a reduction in profit of a quarter need a week to recover, whereas only 1 in 3 MSEs with a similar shock need a week to recover. In the next slide, we dig into the socio-demographic and business characteristics that are more conducive to a faster recovery. We found that business owner school attainment is positively associated with faster recovery, as well as having at least 1 paid employee, being younger, and also have a higher profit, a higher daily profit. In the next slide, we move into the financial capabilities. And we found that although savings and borrowing were cited as the most effective coping strategies, we found also that MSEs could barely tap into financial service providers to address the shocks. Less than 20% mentioned being able to get funds to cover expenses from banks, and 10% from microfinance. Out of 9 sources to get funds in case of emergency, within a week, MSE could only tap into 1.4 on average. And regarding savings behavior, more than half of MSE save only occasionally, seldom, or never. In the next slide, we analyze the digital, operational, and entrepreneurial capabilities, and we found some interesting things. We found that digital tools adoption varied significantly, of course, depending on the type. However, only a fraction of MSEs use them beyond social networks. And at least half of MSEs use digital tools for marketing and climate communication comms, while a quarter use them for payment acceptance, receiving orders, managing inventory management, invoicing, and accounting. A quarter doesn't use any of those digital tools. And this is relevant because MSEs using at least 3 digital tools show high resilience according to econometric estimations. We also found that MSEs are highly vulnerable to supply chain disruption, as half of them reported that it was impossible or very difficult to find another supplier in case of loss of the current, an MSE that could replace suppliers if these were lost coincide with those that recover faster. Finally, some business behaviors considered conducive to better outcomes are not widespread. All MSE owners, only a third do not keep a written sales record, and 2/3 do not keep a record of amounts of sales. Moving into the psychosocial capabilities, we found 3 aspects. First, that agency is positively associated with overcoming shocks faster, as those who mention having a strong sense of control on their business's fate are also those with faster recovery. This might signal attitudes more inclined to adapt faster and find new work streams to increase sales. However, a non-negligible proportion of MSEs owners report little agency, as 4 in 10 mention having little or no control over their businesses. Second, most surveyed MSEs have proven their resilience, as 6 in 10 have been running their businesses before COVID, as I mentioned. So it is not surprised that 3 in 4 reported a gritty type response, as they could persist in their goal despite facing difficulties. And third, peer learning might be limited, as half of MSEs report knowing few or no people running businesses like theirs. And on the last slide, we conducted a sex disaggregated analysis to surface the degree of gender inequality that we're seeing. And we found 4 aspects. First, less access to finance, as women-owned MSEs are less likely to tap into financial service providers in an emergency. Second, MSEs are leading younger businesses, as the mean of years of being operating is 4 compared to 7 of men. Third, we find a lower adoption of digital tools, as women-owned MSEs are less likely to use 2 digital tools than 3, 2 versus 3. And finally, women are running smaller MSEs. 42% have at least 1 paid employee compared to 57% of men-owned MSEs. So these are the findings that we have found. We will publish a brief on this on the framework and the results of this survey that will be available next month in the Stripe Mexico website. So please keep tuned on that. We'll publish that on our social networks. And then let me go to the panel discussion. First, I would like to start with a questions for the 3 of you. And my question is, why it's important to incorporate a lens on measuring and understanding MSE resilience from the standpoint of your organizations? We can start with Juan. Juan, please.
Thank you, Marco. For Fundación Capital, and with the work that we have done throughout the years with vulnerable populations, we have understood that resilience presents many very different features, really depending on the type of segment that we target. The results that you have presented are very powerful in the sense that they illustrate how women-owned MSEs are comparatively more challenged to face shocks. But besides these figures, I would like to add that women have less time available as a result of social norms. They also have lower levels of human capital, as seen, and as presented, also less access to finance. And as a result from that, the businesses, of course, were hit harder by the COVID pandemic. And this is something that we observed in our digital project, which finished last March. The comparative analysis of resilience, I think, really goes beyond gender. There are many other aspects. And when we disaggregate MSEs in the resilience diagnosis, we can really see that resilience is a mosaic that presents very different colors. Really, as I said, depending on the profile of each business type and the industry in which it participates. So in that regard, and in the sense that Fundación Capital wants to accompany businesses in their journey to digitize, we really try to incorporate all of these nuances of resilience from the lens of gender, but also from the business profiles and the owner aspirations and needs, so that we can really craft solutions that intentionally tackle the areas that need more attention. So to briefly answer your question, Marco, understanding resilience is crucial for us because our efforts are guided by resilience as one of the core outcomes to be achieved through business digitization.
Great. Thank you, Juan. Tatiana, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marco and Juan. You know what, Microentrepreneurs, we have supported entrepreneurs and mostly under-resourced entrepreneurs in many different countries after crisis. An example of this was the earthquake of 2017 in Mexico, the hurricanes Dorian and Gloria in the Caribbean, the Lebanon explosions. But definitely it was the pandemic that showed us more about the vulnerabilities for MSEs. And also the importance of supporting increased resilience, you know, since as we have seen in the previous year, this is not going to be the last crisis that MSMEs are going to face. We know, for example, that climate change is already happening and it's causing disruptions for many entrepreneurs, and in many different ways, they are already experiencing the effects. And as a result of this study show, there are also significant differences in how women are accessing key resources that are going to increase the resilience. Now we're talking about finance, that is key. We're talking about digitization, education, access to financial resources, access to social networks. That is one. But on the other hand, something that we haven't done is fully recognize the contribution of women entrepreneurs in mitigating, you know, the effects of the economic disruption of the pandemic, for example. So at Micromentor, we are focused on offering access to social capital for under-resourced entrepreneurs, and we have this focus on women. And we have seen through the years, you know, that mentor entrepreneurs significantly increase their access to finance, for example. They also increase their access to psychological well-being. They also increase their abilities and their skills. And that we know, as you presented, are critical to increase the resilience. So in terms of why resilience is important, I would say first, because climate change is already here, and entrepreneurs, and mostly under-resourced entrepreneurs, need to be prepared to face the challenges that they are going to face or they are already facing in this moment. You know? And for organizations, understanding what is actually supporting entrepreneurs, what is helping entrepreneurs to increase this resilience is key to orient our efforts, you know, and to understand what are the results of these efforts, and if we actually are supporting these entrepreneurs to be better prepared for the next crisis.
Thank you, Tatiana. We'll come back with the gender aspect that you raised. Thanks so much. Valerie, please.
Thank you, Marco. So the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth aims to advance sustainable economic growth and financial inclusion around the world, and we have a goal of connecting 50 million micro, small, and medium enterprises to the digital economy by 2025, half of them women-owned, MSMEs, by the way. So to advance on this very big goal, we are producing independent research, such as this one, which is key for making informed decisions towards this strategy. Micro and small businesses are a predominant sector in Mexico, and we need to understand what moves them, what interventions will really positively impact their lives. And that's why we love the concept of resilience, because it goes beyond a few traditional data points that reflect present needs. And then with resilience, we can see a more complete story of their past, the present, and the future of MSMEs. Resilience let us understand how does this MSME leverage support from their community, as you just presented, how do they cope with their environment, and most importantly, if they will survive or not, if they are more likely. So once we start collecting all this data, we can design better analytical models. And let's not forget that we live in an era where, as we get better data, we can feed new technologies such as AI, for example, and achieve faster actionable impact. In a recent conference that the center organized, it was noted that the majority of data fed into AI comes from North America. So we need to keep investing in quality data from other geographies to achieve a scalable social impact.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks for this insightful responses. You know, translating data into action is always very challenging. So let me ask you this. How can we translate the findings from resilience that I presented in the panel earlier, or in any diagnostic whatsoever, into actionable items for organization like yours?
Shall I go first, Marco?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Well, I think that there are many actionables, and based on our experience with a digital project, I would like to center on one specific finding, which is that social networks are very important among MSEs. And I mean, this is probably an opinion, but really, actually not an opinion. I mean, we have a lot of data and we observe that in digital, but really social networks might even be more important than other digital tools and channels for MSEs. And we observed that particularly during the pandemic. So based on evidence from Digital, as I said, which is a project that operated in not only in Mexico, actually, but also Colombia and Peru, we studied a sample of MSEs, among which 74% of businesses had digital payments, but did not really consider them essential for their survival, and their self-perception was that they could operate without them. And in contrast, they declared that they could not imagine a future without WhatsApp, for example, especially after the pandemic erupted and after they really had an experience operating through WhatsApp. And this finding, I think, may suggest that there are actionables where social networks are a crucial vehicle to introduce other digital tools, not only in terms of their role in the sequential design of the process of digitization, but also using social networks in terms of the correlation between them and other sets of digital tools that may be adopted by the business later in the process once they start using the social networks. Another actionable, I think, that is also relevant from the evidence that you presented, Marco, is the lower likelihood of women to adopt digital tools, which is why we have crafted a specific pillar for digital mentoring to women-owned MSEs in Strive Mexico, in collaboration with MicroMentor. We really think that we can substantially improve the digital adoption ratio among women by providing bespoke mentoring that is better suited to women's needs and constraints and the choice architecture that women-owned MSEs have and face.
Thank you, Juan. Shall I?
Yeah, please, Tatiana.
Thank you, Marco. So I think, like I want to focus in the access to financial resources. I believe that is key. And reducing the gap for entrepreneurs, and mostly for women entrepreneurs. And so something that we have observed every year through our business outcome survey in MicroMentor is actually that the female entrepreneurs who experience mentoring have better results, better outcomes than their male counterparts. And one of the outcomes that we have observed is access to finance, to these financial resources that are critical. They increase their opportunity up to 12%, and in previous years we have seen even better increase. So an immediate action, and this is of course in the framework of resilience, Strive is in the framework of resilience, that we are already doing it with Función Capital and also Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth, is partnering with financial institutions. So to ensure that women have access to key business educational resources, and also this bespoke mentorship that Juan was mentioning, and also ideally providing information about the financial options that are available and would be more appropriate for them. So we will use 3 component approach: the digital content, that curated mentorship, the bespoke mentorship, and also enhances their access to financial resources through these partnerships with financial institutions will be key to increase the resilience. And also something to mention here is that these digital tools that we have put in front of these entrepreneurs, that we want to put in front of these entrepreneurs, have been tailored for women, have been tailored for these kind of enterprises. And the goal is to reduce the barriers for them to use them. So that way we can also increase digital adoption.
Great. Thank you, Tatiana. Valerie, how does these insights align with what you're trying to achieve, what we're trying to achieve with Strive Mexico?
So I feel like this is very aligned with what we're trying to achieve with Strive, where all of our organizations are part of, thankfully. So we're working, all of us together, towards this goal. And we're trying to be very conscious around how to develop solutions that will address specific challenges that MSEs face that you've already identified. Some research has shown, as you mentioned, that the more digital an MSE is, the more resilient it is. And for us, the definition of digitalization is not only accepting payments, but also managing digitally your business, expanding your sales channels online, getting access to financial services. And these are several layers of digitalization and resilience. And the solutions should be also holistic and try to tackle all of these different layers. So you presented very interesting findings. For example, the MSEs are highly vulnerable to supply chain disruptions, as you mentioned, since half of them reported that it was impossible or very difficult to find another supplier. So as a concrete example, one of the digital tools of Strive is a search engine for MSEs where they can compare and find new suppliers. Another example is you mentioned that just 27% of MSEs use digital tools for their businesses. Or for receiving orders, managing inventory, invoicing, accounting, all these processes that are necessary for an MSE, and they don't leverage digital tools, right? So another solution of Strive is a training platform that delves into the importance of digital tools and managing a business. And of course, one of the bigger issues, which is this barrier of access to finance. So through Strive, we are partnering with several institutions, as Tatiana mentioned, that are helping us close this gap. So, I mean, in conclusion, I feel like we need to tackle this challenge from several fronts, and this research definitely help us to understand where should we focus.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. This round was really interesting. I guess I see the need for collaboration, the need to put a gender lens on it, to be conscious and mindful of the needs for doing segmentation analysis and find the MSEs where they are and providing support where they are. So let's move on something that I want to ask you is I'd like to understand how different approaches promote resilience, because it's different whether you are a development organization, whether you are an NGO, a governmental organizations, a company, or a foundation. So let me start with you, Valerie. Mexico is a cash-driven economy, right, with a lower level of financial inclusion for both individuals and MSEs. So how is the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth addressing the need for financial services?
Okay, so yeah, cash is still king in Mexico, and addressing access to finance, it's a huge challenge. I mean, it's the question that not only the private sector does all the time, but also governments and several international organizations, right? So for Mastercard, for the center, and for Mastercard as a business as well, our goal is to embed sustainability and inclusion into the heart of our business. So basically working together, that is, we approach digitalization and financial inclusion from an ecosystem perspective, where not only the Center for Inclusive Growth plays a part, but also Mastercard as a business. And it's about aligning incentives and achieving sustainable impact. So, for example, through Strive, the center launched and developed these digitalization tools that provide training and foster usage of digital services. And we are also creating a learning community. But on the other hand, through the help of Mastercard as a business, we are creating more holistic solutions via our technology or our partners, which we are encouraging to help us close gaps such as access to finance, and this ecosystem approach is key, basically working together as organizations. We are also moving away from the concept of developing the right product to developing the right solution for these segments. And what do I mean by this? Basically, to compete against cash, it's not about creating a single product, but making it part of a bigger solution that incorporates multiple components and ultimately yields a seamless experience with the right value-add services.
Absolutely, absolutely. Juan, tell us briefly what you have learned from a program aimed at increasing MSE digital adoption, like Fundación Capital Digital.
Yes, I think we learned a lot. And one of the reasons is that the project actually started the very day that the global social distancing began when the pandemic erupted. So we had to adapt the intervention overnight and ironically into an implementation that was substantially more digital than we expected because we could not go into the field. So I guess that is how we learned about the power of social networks and how quickly the businesses really adapted to start operating via WhatsApp, for example. So we had many success stories among businesses that we met in Facebook fan pages also, where we provided a wide array of webinars with very different types of content for digitizing businesses. And we were very surprised because the pace of change was actually very fast. A lot of the MSEs were very engaged and experimented with different digital tools they had never used, such as inventory management, or they were very quickly also doing digital marketing with very simple tools. And perhaps it was the need to adapt or perish among the businesses during the early days of the COVID pandemic that they were more willing to change behaviors without much resistance. I think that was very interesting to see. Having said that, and probably the most important learning is that digitization is not a process that is the same for all businesses. We are really dealing with a mosaic of very different profiles of businesses, and even among mom and pop shops, which took the lion's share of our efforts, we find a wide variety of needs and preferences, and what might work for somebody within the mom and pop shops might not work for others. So perhaps I would say that what is most important as a learning from that experience is that there is no silver bullet or a one-size-fits-all type of solution. In any case, I think what is certain is that accompanying businesses in their digital journey totally makes a difference in terms of increasing the ratio of digital adoption.
Totally agree. Thank you. Now let me turn to Tatiana. Tatiana, how is MicroMentor supporting MSEs to gain a deeper sense of control over their businesses? Because as we present, this is quite an important element, and that is related to MSE resilience, according to the data. You're mute, Tatiana.
Sorry, I was double muted. So MicroMentor is the largest mentoring network. We have thousands of mentors and we have thousands of entrepreneurs around the world. And it's basically that we put the space, we put the structure, we put the methodology, but it's between the community where the magic happens. It's between a mentor and an entrepreneur where the magic happens. And we have observed through the years, and actually we start measuring this after the pandemic, because we put that COVID-19 mentor task force response. And we start to measure not only how many jobs were retained, but also how entrepreneurs were feeling about themselves. So we found that psychological well-being is one of the primary outcomes for mentorship. And what does that mean? This means that entrepreneurs are able to increase their motivation, are able to increase their confidence. When you have a sounding board, a mentor that is able to listen to you deeply, to share their expertise, technical advice, also even opening your doors for networks, that helps entrepreneurs navigate, the business challenges that they are facing, and also be more prepared for the future. And as a result of this, what we found is 70% of mentor entrepreneurs, as I said before, they reported feeling more prepared and also more positive about the future. So the way that MicroMentor is supporting an agency for entrepreneurs is through access to mentors, through access to qualified mentors that can share their knowledge, their experience, supporting you to develop your skills, to develop the possibility to increase your net worth, your access to financial resources. And if you are able to develop this, even when you are not going to be able to control external factors, you might not be feeling powerless and isolated, and you might have someone to reach to when needed.
Okay, thank you so much. I guess for me, what I take from what you mentioned is, first, the need to have a comprehensive approach to support MSEs in their pathways to resilience and growth and digitization, right? So from a financial perspective, taking a financial perspective from enhancing their access to financial services, to promoting their well-being and their feelings of control and agency, to promote the adoption of tailored financial services and digital tools. And I will also stress, from what you mentioned, the need of social network. Being the social network, WhatsApp, right, or Facebook, to social networks, like being part of a community, being engaged with mentors, with peers. I guess those were some of the takeaways that I have from this discussion. So now let me turn to gender aspects. You have raised the gender aspects in your responses, and that's a crucial part of our analysis and the agenda. So let me start with Valerie. Valerie, could you quickly describe the strategy that Mastercard is considered to implement or is implementing to address gender inequalities?
Sure. So we aim to digitize 25 million women-owned businesses globally by 2025. And to achieve this very small goal, we need to have different approaches, of course, as we've discussed, right? Like, we can't use the same strategies for men and women since their contexts are usually pretty different. One of the coping mechanisms that you mentioned at the beginning is working extra hours. And Juan already mentioned this. Like, it grabbed my attention since if we think about it, women don't usually have that luxury. Like, they're more likely to get back to their household, take care of their children or their elderly. So this connects to an insight that you published with the white paper of Strive, where it said that since time is more scarce for them, some women tend to have aspirations to sustain their business rather than growing it. And that's a pretty significant barrier if you think of it. So through Mastercard, we're investing also in more research with a gender-focused perspective. We're continuously looking to understand the segment through specific papers. Last year, we sponsored a paper on funding needs for women-owned medium enterprises, which are usually referred to as the missing middle, which is also a segment that lacks access to finance. We found that they usually get smaller loans and higher interest rates. So we also engage in other initiatives, such as an alliance that we have with Women World Banking and the Zurich University to develop ethical algorithms, for example. We have an alliance with CARE that looks into developing better solutions. And from the Mastercard business aspect, like advisors, where I'm a part of also as a consultant, we aim to design better gender-focused solutions for our clients as well. And finally, we do have another project, a program called Start Path Empodera. It's basically an accelerating program for women also to foster and help them grow their businesses. So those are some of the initiatives that we are carrying out at the present.
Okay, great. Thank you, Valerie. Let me turn to Juan. Juan, could you mention any best practices for gender-sensitive approaches in promoting digital tool adoption based on your experience at Digital?
Well, I don't know if it's a best practice, but I would like to mention it because for us, at least, it was a very interesting learning process, and which has to do with not fearing non-traditional methods when trying to understand women-owned businesses. In our case, we used natural language processing methods when researching about the needs and adoption journeys of the digital tools of women-owned MSEs. And the results and our understanding of women-owned businesses really went beyond the evidence that we would have had if we had followed a traditional survey approach. The pitch, the pauses in a response, for example, can really say much more than a yes or a no from a traditional survey question. And this is because digitization is really something still very new for many of the businesses that we work with. And in that sense, the reflections about their own needs and goals are not necessarily fully understood through traditional surveys. So I think that really in order to fine-tune and to refine a gender-sensitive approach, we need to really go deeper and be creative in how we want to approach women to understand their needs and their digital journeys for digital and financial inclusion. I think, yes, I would say the challenge ahead is to be very creative. There is a lot of talk, for example, and you just mentioned, Valerie, about bias in credit scoring algorithm, for example. And the answer, I think, is really to be creative, to not be afraid of using alternative methods, because we might be surprised that we will find something that we didn't expect when following other methods. So, as I said, in our case, we have very interesting results from this non-traditional research that are actually going to be published very soon. So I'm sure that you might find that very interesting.
Thank you, Juan. Tatiana, how is Micromentor addressing gender differences in resilience and coping mechanisms through your mentorship programs?
Yeah, so I think it was a couple of years ago that we made the strategic decision to focus our design in women entrepreneurs, for women entrepreneurs. It's not that we wanted to be Micromentor platform wanted to be only for women, but we really wanted to reduce the barriers for women to access mentorship. So we conducted some research to understand what were the most important barriers in Latin America and in Africa. And of course, we found digitization was a big barrier. Connectivity, of course, how expensive that can be. For some women, cultural situations, they are looking to work or they are able to work with only a woman mentor. And we also wanted to ensure that they feel secure, because in Micromentor, like we have, as I mentioned, we have thousands of mentors, thousands of entrepreneurs, and you're able to connect with them through the platform. So we wanted that women feel secure in their mentorship relationship. So we designed it, like the mechanisms to address these challenges that we found. So first, we're going to launch it and through an integration between Fundación Capital and Micromentor, entrepreneurs are going to have access to very different tools in a really easy way. But it's a mobile application that is low bandwidth. So that is one of the first decisions that we made. It has to be mobile because women entrepreneurs are mostly connected on their mobile phones. It has to be connected with, for example, voice messaging, because we know it's hard to type, and if you're digital literacy is not very high, you might want to send a voice message. And of course, we also included, you know, an easier way for women to report if something's going on, and as well to, you know, to curate their mentorship experience based on their preferences. So if they want to connect specifically with a woman entrepreneur, with a woman mentor, they are able to do it, you know. And something also that we have found through the time is, you know, like there are certain messages, there are certain channels of communication that work better for women. So we are trying to implement what we have been learning from data. And I think I mentioned this in a previous question, but it was very interesting to see that female entrepreneurs that experience mentoring have better business, higher business outcomes than their male counterparts. You know, so we really want to ensure that, you know, they have access to this critical resource, and also that they are able to unlock other resources through their experience.
Thank you, Tatiana. Those were really good answers. I guess for me, it's clear that you have moved from. I mean, it's clearly that you're not just doing gender targeting to women, but also being gender intentional with your businesses, within your organizations. And I guess we need to be very creative, very greedy in trying to finding what women needs, what are their preferences, and also work on many different aspects, right? Not only on the traditional, trying to understand their like what are their behaviors, but also on realms as data driven, as algorithms. So I guess that's pretty enlightening. So let me go to the last section of our panel, so we can surface the climate resilience. So I will ask for everybody, how can we promote MSE's ability to cope with climate-related shocks? Tatiana, you want to go first?
Yes, I can kick us off. So I think, you know, like women-led businesses have experienced disproportionate vulnerabilities and challenges, and these have been even more, and women entrepreneurs are even more vulnerable when we're talking about climate, you know, access to social capital, and also the ability to access important resources or critical resources for their businesses. And something that was very interesting to see as microentrepreneurs, because we recently conducted this research, is even when women entrepreneurs were leading businesses that included sustainable practices, for example, in agriculture, you know, using organic ways to crop, they didn't report themselves as a sustainable or as a green business, as a green business. So this was super interesting in terms of like why women are not recognizing themselves, you know, as driving these sustainable practices or as drivers of these green businesses. They prefer to choose another industry, for example, agriculture, retail, import, and export. Even when you were reading the profiles, you can see that they are driving a green business. So we thought this might be, and of course, you know, this might be the way that our platform is conducted right now, but also this can be a symptom of the lack of information and the lack of information about business opportunities that having sustainable practices can unlock for women. You know? Something that was very impressive to me is that only 1% of the investment in climate technology goes to female entrepreneurs. So we're talking about an amazing, like an incredible gap between how are we investing in male entrepreneurs and how are we investing in women entrepreneurs that are leading climate change technologies. And, you know, like, so we need to try to equalize, to balance a little bit how these women entrepreneurs are accessing those, accessing finance, also because Another part of the research shows that women are also more willing to take action, when they have the information. So for me, it's like, we cannot just expect that women do the right thing, we also need to do the right thing. And that means increasing access to finance so women entrepreneurs can actually, unlock what they are already doing, creating more sustainable practices. And they are doing it because, is the way they have been doing probably since generations, But right now, for me, the biggest challenge and where do we need to put our attention in terms of climate change is really equipping women entrepreneurs to unlock finance and being able to escalate the work that they are doing.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you. Juan, please.
Yes, I am not sure I have the answer, actually. I think this is really a big challenge because most financial products that exist were not designed to respond to the climate resilience and adaptation needs of women. So as a result, there is a lot of work to be done in product design, following perhaps a different mindset in the supply side, because the return on investment of climate change related products is totally different from what we currently have in the financial supply. Green products have very different cash flow and time horizons than traditional microfinance credit business models, for example. So in that respect, I think that the challenge ahead involves, a systemic response that needs to involve many actors, not only the supply side, but regulatory bodies and governments to provide incentives for innovation.
Thank you, Juan. Valerie, you want to mention something about this?
Yeah, I'll be quick because I see the time. So, I agree with Tatiana. These global shocks usually tend to affect the most vulnerable populations first. So having a women-owned enterprises focus is important also as part of these solutions. We know digitalizing will help them be more resilient, but as Juan mentioned, we still have to go further than that and involve other bodies. I don't know, maybe also from the standpoint of our corporations as well, we need to continue being consistent with our big picture ESG goals, such as net zero emissions. Like, everybody has to do their own thing from their big picture side, and also with direct interventions to the vulnerable segments.
Okay, thank you so much, Valerie. Okay, so we just have 1 minute left. So let me just wrap up quickly, just to mention that I'm glad that we have this panel discussion. It has been quite insightful for me. I hope for the audience too. I guess at the end, all the dots connected. As women face the highest burden from climate shocks, and they are the most vulnerable, but also that we need to take a comprehensive approach, which is the idea of resilience, right? The idea of this framework and and also I'm seeing gladly that your approaches are taking not only one single approach, but many approaches, and trying to find what are the needs of the population that you're serving. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for the audience, and thank you so much. Have a wonderful noon or night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I lost my connection, but I'm back.